One of the great things about radio is you're surrounded by great stories. Stories you've heard, of course, and also, at times, stories you get to tell. There are other times some of the stories are never told except in a small circle of broadcasters, and those are the ones that we've kind of featured. And after 20 episodes of doing Broadcast Chronicles, I thought it might be time to find out, as chosen by you, what some of those top stories are. So here it is, the list of the top 5 stories, lighthearted stories, as featured on Broadcast Chronicles and chosen by you and told by many of our guests.
Broadcast Chronicles, revealing the most surprising, compelling, and even shocking stories behind some true characters from the other side of the microphone. Here's Bruce Claggett.
Before I even get to our top 5 list of stories as told by our interviewees, I wanted to talk about the fact that working in radio, you get to come across some really interesting stories. Some of those stories come from our listeners, and some of them never get told at all for various reasons. But I have to share one, and it happened an evening working the anchor desk at CKNW, where we got so many phone calls from people in North Vancouver telling us about this unidentified object that was hovering over backyards and reaching down with an arm and seemingly looking for something, and then the arm would retract. Well, I, of course, asked the question, could it be a helicopter, maybe even a sightseeing helicopter? Nope, making no sound. This was long before drones. I asked the question, could it be something remote controlled? No, because it disappeared very, very quickly when we started to call up to it. Well, I phoned the Vancouver Airport. Vancouver Airport also had several phone calls, no idea about it. And I phoned the RCMP. The RCMP also had several phone calls, and they didn't know what was going on. Finally, I got a phone call back from somebody that was at the Vancouver Tower, and they tracked down what the whole thing was. And apparently it was one of the cell phone companies at the time had a hot air balloon and was offering sunset kind of tours to a select few people over the North Shore. And they accidentally, yes, did reach down with their spotlight, trying to show people a good time and trying to highlight different things, but hit the backyards. Well, the unexplained is something that one of our guests, who comes in with number 5, started to pick up as a second career, a broadcaster, and one of our favorites here at Broadcast Chronicles, Dave Scott, is the host of Spaced Out Radio, and I got a chance to ask him about the unexplained and how that ended up being one of his choices in hosting a new program long after his career in sports radio came to an end.
When I put my microphone down, I knew I was never coming back. At least I thought I knew. And, I used to be a big fan of sports. I used to be a big fan, if you remember, nighttime radio of Art Bell.
Oh, yeah.
Coast days. And I always thought, that is a dream job. I'd never really experienced anything. I'd worked in a haunted building. I'd lived in a haunted house. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Prior to my radio career, I worked as a hockey instructor for a little training center in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Bruce, this building was so haunted, I absolutely hated being there alone. It scared me being there alone. And everything from seeing people in windows to you'd be cleaning up the dressing rooms and you would hear pucks being hit on the boards or the plexiglass, which makes a very, very interesting sound. You go out to the ice and nobody's there. The doors are all locked. I mean, it was a creepy place. And so, when I got into radio, I wanted to get into sports. My goal was to get into the NHL somehow. Yeah. I knew I'd never make it as a player. That dream was long gone, but while I was still in my teenage years. But I wanted to work in the NHL, and that was the goal. But it just never seemed to be in fruition. I felt really held back. Add to the fact that I went through an ugly separation and divorce, and just decided to make a complete career change. And when I put my microphone down, I knew I wasn't coming back. And then in 2011, I started having some very strange experiences that I just could not explain. And, being a journalist, when we have something happen, we investigate it. We're like detectives, old school journalism, not this crap you see today. And when you go out there and you investigate, I noticed that I was staying up until 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning each night, just Googling, watching the paranormal television shows, watching videos, documentaries, anything I could find on some of the things that I had seen, because I'd started seeing a few weird things in the sky. I had, started having some paranormal experiences that I just could not understand or explain.
Many people know the name Clay St. Thomas as the co-host of JR Country's morning show, and before that he was over at Z95. But I got a chance to talk to Clay about his early days in radio in Brandon, Manitoba, and his initial touches with fame and Charlie Pride. That comes in at number 4.
Well, no, I was in over my head for sure, because I'd been about 6 months into the radio arts program at Lethbridge College when I had the opportunity to do the overnight show at CKLQ in Brandon, home of the Wheat Kings. I mean, God, how could you not love that? So I snapped up that job, forgot about going to college, and just wanted to work. So about a month in is my first radio job, and I'm just stuck to the wall. I'm just thrilled with everything all the time. And the station presented a Charlie Pride concert. Depending on the age of you as you're watching, that'll mean a lot to you, or it'll mean nothing to you. But I got to, they said at the concert, listen, Charlie and some of the guys in the band need a ride back to their hotel afterwards. Can anybody give them a ride? So I folded all, 6'3", 6'4" of Charlie Pride into the back of the 1972 Cougar that I owned at the time, 2-door. And I'm driving back from the Keystone Center in Brandon going, I can't believe friggin' Charlie Pride's in the back of my car. I'm too nervous to speak to him or say anything. I'm just kind of nodding along as we go. That was the first time I'd ever met anybody who was remotely famous in music. And it was Charlie Pride, who was like a god to my parents.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So, anyway, that was the beginning of that. And then from there it was Medicine Hat for a year and a half. And then shortly after that, I moved to Edmonton and started 7 or 8 years in Edmonton on the air.
Well, our top 5 list of the best stories as chosen by listeners to Broadcast Chronicles. Coming in at number 3 is Kid Carson of Z95 and the Beat fame, talking about his earlier days in radio when he got a chance to go to Las Vegas and interview 50 Cent.
And I'd never been to Vegas before. And they invited 2 Canadian morning shows, one from Toronto, one from Vancouver, and I got chosen. And I went by myself. I'm kind of walking around Vegas by myself for the first time, like just a deer in headlights. But the thing that stood out with that experience is that, seriously. And the thing that was wild about that is that because we were from Canada, we were last on the list. So all the big American morning shows got to interview him first. And at the very, very end of the day, we waited for hours and hours for our turn. It was finally my turn. They said, 50 cents ready for you. And I walked in and I could see on his face before he knew that I could see him that he was exhausted. I mean, this guy's probably done, 60 interviews. And I could tell he's just like, he's tired. And I sat down in front of him and he just turned it on. Like, he was so kind, so professional. He gave me a nickname. He's like, yo, Kid Canada. Like, he was so into it. This guy's at the top of his game. Hey, Shorty, it's your birthday is like the number 1 song. He's got a movie. He's got his own like G-Unit running shoes that he's wearing. Yeah. And I just thought I was so inspired by the fact that like, hey, this guy still made the time to be a total professional and give me my 10 minutes. And I just never forgot that.
As you can probably figure, not all interviews go exactly as planned. And here's a story that comes in at number 2. It comes from Stirling Faux over at CFox in the day. And he got a chance to talk to Billy Idol.
Billy at one point played the Commodore. This is probably 30 or 40 years ago, Bruce. And Billy came into CFOX. I was working afternoons at CFOX that time. And of course, as was the case in a lot of artists, especially if they were performing, would pop into CFOX because we were the happening station and we were playing their music. So why not make that connection, especially a few hours ahead of the gig? So Billy shows up at CFOX and he is on planet Mars. He doesn't know where he is, but he's got a lot to say. So he comes into the studio and I play one of his songs and we sit down and we start to talk. And usually you do maybe 5 minutes, maybe 6 or 7 if you really got somebody important. Billy went on for about 20 minutes, Bruce, because I couldn't shut him up. And I remember the program director, Don Schaefer, came upstairs afterwards going, "What the hell what was that all about?" I said, "I couldn't find the cork to stuff in his mouth. He wouldn't shut up." And he was very entertaining. He just blathered on and on and on, enormously entertaining. But again, just on the moon all at the same time. It was a great show, by the way, that night.
And as we wrap up our top 5 list of the best stories as heard on Broadcast Chronicles and chosen by you, the listeners, we go to someone who is not a broadcaster directly, but worked in sales and next to broadcasters and radio personalities. That person is Brad McDonald. He came from the sales department and also worked very closely with promotions and remembers one such case, one such story involving a car dealership and an on-air remote out in Maple Ridge.
Clay and Karen, the morning show were fantastic, and they did goofy stuff. We did a promotion with a Chrysler dealership in Maple Ridge called the Big Green Thing, which we did around St. Patrick's Day, where we invited listeners. They did the morning show live from what was then Super Dave's Chrysler, and it was from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We invited listeners to show up with their biggest green thing. Now, the prize was a green Chrysler Neon. So this is like 2003, 2004. Yeah. And it was the most bizarre cavalcade of human beings I've ever seen in my life show up. We had people with paper chains painted green. We had people with green squash, but we had people with a big semi with green lumber spray painted. But the winner was somebody brought a military grade parachute in. It was like these people came out of the woodwork to win a car, and it was like that was fun. I mean, that is fun stuff.
Oh, and the person behind the microphone for the Big Green Thing, Clay St. Thomas.
Yeah, it was a good idea. It was a great idea. So, car dealer, it was that time Super Dave's in Maple Ridge. Chrysler dealer wanted to do a big promotion, and it was spring. So I was like, okay, an on-location thing, and for St. Patrick's Day, we'll do show us your big green thing. And whoever can bring in the biggest green thing is going to win a 1-year lease on a car. That was the prize. Yeah, 1-year lease on a car. Good prize.
Yeah.
And so we were like, oh, this will be fantastic, because again, no limitations on what it could be. What we hadn't considered was what the criteria was for big and how we were going to measure this. So was it a big green box? Was it a continuous thing? Because what happened was somebody came in with a combine. That's from the tip of the combine. It was a John Deere combine. From the tip of the combine down to the end of the spines on the ground that pick up the wheat was massive. But there was, among all the people that were there, and a lot of people came out with their green things, thinking they were going to ace this thing. There was huge fighting amongst them, and that, well, you can't take that because that's not mine. Has more green in it than that does, and you didn't say it could be that size or it was going to be, but measured from end to end, it was the biggest green thing. So at one point we were going to give the prize to somebody else, and the person with the combine started complaining, rightfully so. They had a point to be made, and we're in the middle of doing the show, and these super angry listeners are now complaining to us, complaining to the general manager of the car dealership, complaining to the general manager of the radio station. This thing is blowing up as we are trying to have our happy, fun, good time with our crazy contest on here.
Broadcast Chronicles is written and hosted by Bruce Claggett. Music, Follow Your Heart via Upbeat. Graphic design, Creative Shovel. I'm Sarah Mackenzie. Subscribe to Broadcast Chronicles wherever you download your favorite podcasts. This has been a BFC Communications production.